There we go. Okay, my name is Miles Gray. I'm a lab leader in the GG lab. If you've not met me in some way before, either through a generic, through a previous elective, if you're in my lab, what have you. Um, Kind of like the name implies, this elective is about winning tournaments, and namely about winning large competitive national tournaments. And you may be wondering, why give a separate elective on winning tournaments? It seems that if you just studied all the other electives, got good at debate camp, cut your cards, did your speaking drills, you wouldn't need this elective, and that you'd be so good you'd win all the tournaments anyway, right? And my answer to that is maybe not. That because winning tournaments requires a separate layer of strategy that will separate you from even your strongest competitors. And at the very highest levels of competition, the things that will determine whether you win or lose a major debate or a tournament will actually depend a little bit less on the elemental skills that you need in order to get to that final debate and more on some of the skills that we're going to discuss this morning. So I want to kind of emphasize at the outset that what we're doing right now, it requires a little bit of a different way of thinking about how to debate. This does not mean that all of the elemental skills that you already have don't matter. In fact, they do matter a ton, but you're going to have, if you really want to get to those deep elims to win large tournaments, you're going to also have to have a little bit of a different mindset on top of all of those other elemental skills and be thinking about a different layer of strategy as well. This lecture will be divided into 6 parts: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. These parts, as you may guess, will correspond to the various days of a tournament, and we will discuss what you should be doing at each step of the way. So if you're taking notes, you should divide them into those 6 days. The elephant in the room is that this schedule is based on a normal pre-coronavirus tournament, where you would compete on a Saturday, on a Sunday, and on a Monday. This may change a bit in ways that I'm not quite sure of. There might be debates happening on Fridays. You might be debating on all 6 of the days instead of just 3 of them and having 2 debates a day. There's really kind of a lot of different ways that all of this could go. So what I'm hoping that you do is understand the principles that I'm giving and then kind of map them onto tournaments as they happen. And that's just going to require a little bit of flexibility that the coronavirus times are requiring of everyone. So I hope that this schedule or this template is not too out of the norm. Okay, one final note before I go into each individual day is that in order to win a tournament and in order for the things I'm going to ask of you to do on these days to make sense and to work, is you must work as a team, and there's no way around this. And that's why I love the DDI model so much, is because it's beginning to teach you and hopefully immerse you in working as a debate team versus working as a debate partnership or as an individual. Can you occasionally win a tournament if you do the work of 6 people by yourself and a lot of luck falls your way? Sure. But the key to long-term repetitive tournament success is building a team that cares more about the success of the organization than they do about any one partnership or individual. And this requires several things that I'd like to talk about before we go into the specifics. So first is building a team culture that is conducive to success. And this means making everyone invested in the team winning. Do not make some people, typically younger or less experienced debaters, carry all the weight or do the grunt work. I'm always amazed to see teams that are organized such that the youngest people with the least experience are the ones that are somehow or for some reason required to do all the card cutting. That makes no sense to me. 1, because usually those people are the least experienced at cutting cards, and 2, because it's going to make them a lot less invested in the team's success than everyone else is. You should actually let your lower teams break a new strategy every now and then. Let them help write new affirmatives or scout judges. Let them, participate in some of the benefits of debating at a high level. This, as someone who's been the younger or the youngest person on a debate team and has also been the oldest on a debate team, I can tell you that for both perspectives, it makes sense to have everyone start to reap some of the benefits of high-level debating. Even if that means coordinated breaking, and that's the thing we'll discuss in a little bit, where both teams break something at the same time so that you get all the benefits of the newness without, at double. But you want to make sure that they feel what it's like to debate at a high level and to win at a high level, because that's going to make everyone more invested in the success of the team. Don't do things like have separate drop boxes or secret team meetings, because those will counter, like the opposite effect, will make some people less invested in the team. I recommend doing social events like, for now, virtual team dinners, or checking out the city where your tournament is on the day that you arrive. Basically, what you want to do is build a culture where everyone on the team matters and is important and is treated like they are necessary for the team's success. Because that's what's going to ultimately propel you into having a large organization that is capable of doing things individual partnerships cannot. 2, recruiting. Recruit as many people as possible to your debate team. Now, some things that control this are obviously a bit out of your control. You're likely not in charge of funding for your team or how many teams you can send to various tournaments, how many coaches you're allowed to have, things like that. But you should aggressively work within these limitations to increase the number of people on your team. 4 additional members who cut even 10 cards per tournament is 40 new cards per tournament. 40 new cards can easily make the difference in a large debate. And that you get that pretty easily. 4 new people, 10 cards a person is actually not a really hard load to manage if you're aggressively focusing on recruiting. 3rd, work smart and hard. Assignments need to get turned in on time. Assignments need to make sense. If you have 4 card cutters, you might not be able to go real deep on a case neg for any one of the 80 teams at the tournament. You have to have an honest understanding of your output as a squad and use that to your advantage. And we're going to talk more about research in the Thursday section. You also need to make sure that, just like I said, to recruit younger members to your debate team and to build a culture that respects people of different experience level, you also need to focus energy and resources on improving younger and less experienced debaters, because they ultimately will become the future of your program and will also be the ones that are likely cutting you cards on Sunday night or things like that. And so part of that is actually a lot easier now that we are in a pandemic, because all of debate camp content has been recorded, which means that if younger debaters on your team have not gone to debate camp, or they're first years and so they haven't had the opportunity to go to debate camp yet, you can give them a whole bunch of debate camp content, which will help them improve really fast. There's never been a time before in debate where all of this information about how to debate has been on the internet. And so you can use a lot of the resources you've gotten at the DDI and also at the Georgetown half of things, if you're in the GDDI, to help really quickly improve the younger people on your debate team. And so just like we have taught all of you all, hopefully, how to do things like research, organize files, prepare case negatives, it would be really good for you to quickly turn around and teach that to other people, both because it'll improve your own ability to understand the material and also it will help them. 4th thing about building a strong team is open communication. If something is not working, and there's lots of ways things cannot work. Someone is not doing an assignment. One team doesn't seem that interested in the success of everyone else. One team is always late. You need to talk about it. Resentment and hard feelings may seem easy to conceal and live with in everyday life, and they are, but under the stress of the final few debates and hours of a tournament, those emotions can be killer. In the final moments of a debate tournament on Elam Day, there's not a lot of time for pleases and thank yous and explanations of why you're asking someone to do something. You have to have a lot of inter-team trust. There are moments where you're going to be like, I need politics answers to this. And there's not going to be you can't be like, please do this. Here's all the things I think we need about this. Let's have an honest dialogue about why I think we should do this. And you can disagree. There's no time for that. And so if you have underlying problems and disputes and fractures in your debate team, those are going to get exposed at the worst possible time. because under high pressure, those things become fatal. Everyone in those last few moments needs to be laser focused on the task at hand. And that means dealing with your issues before you show up to the tournament, because otherwise those emotions can be killer. So the 4 things to recap that I think are the most important for building a strong tournament victory capable debate team are building a team culture that is conducive to success, high levels of recruitment, working hard and smart, as well as teaching younger people how to be better at debate, and open communication. Okay, so these are all things that I think are not specific to any one day or time. There's never a time that you should not be focused on these things, and they should start tomorrow. You know, any time that you exist on a debate team, these principles should always exist, and you should always be mindful of them. Okay, I'm now going to go into the days. So the first is Thursday, otherwise known as assignment or preparation day. Thursday is actually kind of a substitute for the week or 2 weeks before the tournament, but Thursday is really where a lot of that culminates. And so that's why we're going to talk about it that way. There are several things that you need to have accomplished on Thursday. First, and probably the one that you're the most familiar with, assignments need to be turned in. Everyone's assignments need to be turned in on Thursday so that they can be reviewed and prepared as necessary on Friday. Assignments, when they're turned in, should be as usable as possible. That means they are highlighted. There's relevant explanations for various things. As many blocks as possible have been written, and breaking restrictions are noted. Those were roughly in the order of priority. Like, if you turn out a file on your debate team that's not highlighted, you're basically guaranteeing someone somewhere during the tournament is going to lose a debate they shouldn't. And that's because highlighting takes highlighting well a full file takes anywhere from 2 to 5 hours. And if you're demanding that one of your teammates spend 2 to 5 hours during the tournament weekend, that those hours don't come out of nowhere. That's time, speaking drill time, or sleep time, none of which should be sacrificed so you can highlight the 4th uniqueness card on the politics DA. All of that stuff should be done ahead of time. So when you're turning out a file, always highlight. This is different than a lot of times at debate camp, which is why I'm hyping it so much, because a lot of people come back from debate camp where they just turn out file after file that's not highlighted, and they think, oh, well, now I will similarly not have to do that. It is different when you're debating. And hopefully the DDI, where I think we're probably highlighting a little bit more here because we're acting as teams, will start to teach you that model that, that you should make your files as absolutely usable as possible. Speaking of assignments, they should be scaled according to your research capacity. And these decisions happen far before Thursday. Before every tournament, we'll talk basics, you must have the following 2 things, non-negotiable every time. Updates to neg generics, which means you have uniqueness, answers to important new developments, either in the world or in terms of debate. So if a new app gets broken that messes with generics in between that tournament and the next one, you need to deal with that. Or if the economy tanks and you have an economy DA, you need to address that, as well as links to anything that is new. Okay, so updates to neg generics, an essential thing before any tournament. That's policy and critique. It doesn't matter what you read, you gotta be neg and you gotta be generic sometimes, and you have to update that. Second is updates to your app. 2AC blocks should be updated and remastered every single tournament. Updated and remastered mean different things. Updated means that there's potentially new arguments you need to have 2AC blocks to, or there's new uniqueness arguments you need to make. Your thumpers should not be the same in September as they are in March. You got to update your 2AC blocks and evolve them both with the world and with the debate meta. Remastered means that you're improving them. The blocks that you write for Green Hill or whatever, Kentucky, whatever your first tournament is, are not ideally the blocks you should be reading by the end of the year, even on something that doesn't update, say the Afro-pessimism K. You learn things as you debate. Judges give you feedback in every debate. All of that should be integrated into your 2AC blocks. And so that's why I say you should update and remaster. 2AC blocks. Similarly, 1AR blocks, updated and remastered. There should never be a 2AC block that gets updated where the 1AR block that's connected to it is not updated. This is for a couple reasons. The first reason being that if your 2AC block says one thing and your 1AR block says something else, you're going to either drop or make new arguments, and you don't want to do either of those things. And so your 1AR block should correspond to your 2AC blocks. Second, if your 2AC block is better, you've improved it ideally, your 1AR block you'd also want to be better. And so you want to synchronize the updates and the remastering between your 1AR and your 2AC blocks. This is something that the 1A and the 2A should be both coordinated on. I didn't mention this earlier, but when you're updating your neg generics, that's also a thing for the 1N and the 2N to be working on. Because oftentimes the person giving the DA speech is the 1N. When I was debating, I was the 2N, but my 1N did all of the DA prep, all of it. Like all of the block writing for the new DA files, all of the organization for the DA files, all of that the 1N did. And that's because he gave all those DA 1 and Rs. And so you can divide prep not solely by I do all neg things, you do all AF things, but also by what makes the most sense given who does what in the debate. Okay, last is when you're updating your AF blocks, you need to make sure any new things that could mess with your AF inherency issues, impact uniqueness issues are addressed. I also love updating, if you have time, the 1AC. And I think that's a good thing too, although I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, so put a pin in that. So after you have updates to neg generics and updates to your AF done, you have a little bit more freedom in what you pursue. But remember, those things are essential. So if you're deciding between writing a new AF and re-updating and remastering your existing 2AC blocks, you've got to do the latter. You don't have time for a new AF. You don't have the resources for a new AF yet. But if you do find yourself that you have a little bit more time, more card cutters, you have, like some freedom. You can write a new generic, a new case neg, a new affirmative. The guiding principle, though, should be an understanding of where you were weak or where you need to punch up, okay? So, and deciding this requires a little bit of a crude understanding of the field. And the field are all of the teams that you're debating, yourself included. And you need to know pretty precisely where you land in that field. In college debate, this is maybe a little bit more crude than you need, where everyone is basically ranked. And there's just like, everyone has a number that refers to roughly where they are in the giant field of teams. And so you have your top 5 to 10, you're like 10 to 20, you're 20 to 36, and you have that. You don't need that necessarily, although if that's how you think and you like to make spreadsheets where you make lists of all the teams, then you can do that too. But even if you have a qualitative understanding or you have A, B, C, D tiers of the field, whatever, you need to have a very just practical understanding of where you are in the field. And that will guide where you design your improvements. If teams in the 8 to 20 or like the A- range have a lot of AFs you don't have anything to say against, it may be worth a new negative generic that focuses on similarities of all of those AFs. So like, say there's like 6 teams that are in this, they're always in the doubles. And then like half of them will win the doubles and go to the octas. And then like none of them will get past the octas. They have like that, that set of teams. And all of them have an AF that has a court actor, okay? If you are having trouble getting to the quarters of a tournament, you need a courts generic. And that's because you're gonna have to beat one of those teams in order to get to the quarters, at least one, maybe 2. Now, what this does not mean is having a very prejudiced, arrogant understanding of the field, such that, you think of teams that are beneath you and you can never beat them, and you idolize the teams at the top. This is not about that. This is not about the sport of categorizing and ranking teams. Teams are not baseball cards. But it is about having a very practical, intimate understanding of where you are in the field and design and filling holes as is necessary. So the converse of this is that if you found this really cool process counter plan, but it has nothing to say against the top 30 AFs, and you think you're probably a top 15, top 20 team, it's not a great use of your time. perhaps, if you don't have time to write everything. Because while that counter plan might be able to beat a lot of teams that you've already beaten, that's not as strategically important as building a strategy that's going to help you punch up five more teams or something like that, or get one more elim deep. If you're consistently losing in the quarters and you build this new strategy that's going to win you round 3, you're still going to lose in the quarters. And so you have to prep smart in that you have to know where you stand and who you need to beat to advance. Fourth thing about Thursday, and there's a lot about prep that I'm omitting, and that's because hopefully you're literally about to prep for a tournament, and you're going to have coaching from your lab leaders and your research people. And so I'm not going to go into it entirely, but just know that the calculus changes a little bit when you're trying to win, because you have to be a little bit more pragmatic about identifying who you need to beat in order to punch up those last few levels, and centering your research there, because that's maybe something you're not going to be doing at the DDI tournament that you're going to have to be doing in real life. Okay, next thing, prefs. They should be done on Thursday. They're usually due on Friday. That doesn't matter. The reason why is that, one, oftentimes you're traveling on Friday, which means there's a lot of time you're in the air, and those are times you can't do prefs. And so if you have it on Thursday, you're not going to have the potential problem where, oh, you did the time zone math wrong. You thought it was 3 hours behind, but actually 3 hours ahead. And then you showed up and you landed and your prefs were due already and you're screwed. If that sounds like a thing that would ever happen to you, then I guess you're lucky. This happened to me all the time in like my senior year of college. We would do this. We would forget prefs and have to send an email pleading to the tournament director to let us make a couple last minute changes because we did the airplane math wrong. And so do it on Thursday. This also matters because a lot of times there's a few judges that are added to the tournament at the last second, and you want to have Friday just to figure that out. You don't want to be building your whole prep sheet and also handling new judges. You want to be able to quickly just throw those people in and move. Also, I think Friday is a rest day in my opinion, and I'll talk about that more in a second. So you don't want to be doing this stuff on Friday. There's a video on watching prefs from Allison Harper and Truth. You should watch that, and I'm not going to go into it more, other than to say that when you're trying to win a tournament, you need to think about Monday for your prep sheet a little bit more. What I mean by this is that judges are obligated to judge usually through the octas or one elim past their last team's loss. Does that make sense? What this means is that the judge pool looks a lot different between round 1 and the semis, because the judge pool in the semis is only judges whose teams were in the quarters or later. And so that means that if you're not having a ton of trouble winning the prelims, or if you're okay taking a one prelim loss because you have a kind of a bad judge, you can exchange that for a really good elim prep sheet by maybe putting some people a little higher than you normally would on your prep sheet, just because they're not going to be judging in the elims, such that you can push down some other bad people you don't want in the elims. So you should think about, when you're making your prep sheet, you should have a list either physically or in your head of the judges that you think will be in there in the last few elims, and think about who they are. And you have to make that list based on which teams normally do well. And if there's a person who's always judging in the semis, for example, and they are really bad for you, maybe they're not going to vote if you don't have a plan and you don't have a plan, you need to put that person way lower than you normally would, because they're going to be judging all the debates of the tournament. Similarly, if there's a judge, let's say you only read a plan, and there's a judge that's not very good for teams that read a plan, and their teams always go 2-4, you can maybe afford to put them a little bit higher, because the chances that you get anyone judging the prelim are kind of low, and they're definitely not going to be judging you in a late elim. And so you can afford to put them a little bit higher in order to push down someone else that will be in the tournament late. And so my only thing about prep sheets that's different than what you've already learned in the video is that you have to be a little bit more cognizant of the dynamic nature of the judge pool as it evolves through the tournament. Next, Thursday, you need to finalize your breaking strategy. You need to determine if new arguments are getting broken at this tournament and when. And it's very important to be really specific about breaking strategy to avoid a headache at the tournament. Can the new thing be broken in a prelim? Can it be broken in the octas? Does it have to be broken in the finals? Can it be broken against a specific team? Can it not be broken against a specific team? Which of your teammates can break it? All of this should be known and decided upon ahead of time, and ideally written into the file itself. So all of your files should have a little header at the top that's just breaking order or breaking strategy, and describes all of the conditions for when a new argument gets broken. And this means, one, you're not having a fight with your teammate during the tournament about breaking, because maybe you have this sick new app and they're in a break round and you're 5-0 and it's round 6 and they're like, we need to break the new app. And you're like, okay, well, that's a hard decision. Like, there's good arguments both ways. The team that wants to clear is like, having 2 teams in the elims is strong. It's a really good thing for your team. It's also good for them as individuals. You might walk over them in the octas or something, and that can help your squad as a whole. At the same time, being 6-0 is huge. That's also a really big advantage. And so having that conversation at the tournament with 30 minutes before a debate is stressful and horrible, and it's going to ruin your whole night. So make all those decisions ahead of time. Think about all of those eventualities, plan for them, decide for them, and then close the book. That way, that round 6 rolls around, you're 5-0, they're 3-2. It says, okay, can be used by X team to break. You've already made that decision. It's already done. There's no heartbreak. It's over. Not only should you do this because it will avoid these little heartbreaking moments that happen at tournaments, you should also do it because breaking order is strategically important for the tournament. When you break new arguments is really, really crucial. If you can save a new, so breaking a new argument in round 6 versus in the doubles, and let's say that those are on different days. So round 6, let's say that's Saturday night, and the doubles, let's say that's, or the Sunday night, and let's say the doubles are Monday morning. If you break that, that's only one debate apart. If you break it on round 6, everyone at the tournament has now 12 hours to prepare for the next time you read it because they have all night. If you break it in the doubles, everyone only has a few hours and maybe even 1 hour or 2 hours to debate it next elam. And so choosing when to break arguments matters a lot for the strategy of the tournament, not only for your intra-team dynamics. And so it's important too to do this, to think about when the best time to read various arguments is. There's no golden rule, and we'll talk about this as we go through the actual tournament days. I'm going to give you tips for when I think certain arguments make the most sense to come out versus when to keep them. But know that these decisions should all be made ahead of time. Last, give a lot of speeches on Thursday. Friday's a rest day, so go a little harder on Thursday. I recommend 1.5 times your normal speaking drill schedule on Thursday. If you normally give 30 minutes of speeches a day, which you should be doing, give 45 on Thursday. Your voice will have a lot of time to recover on Friday, and so it's okay if you push it just a little bit then. Okay, Friday, travel and rest day. Friday is mainly for traveling to the tournament. When we are back in person again, which hopefully will be soon enough, this means making the travel day as easy as humanly possible on yourself. If you are a West Coaster who has to get up at 3 in the morning, do your best to sleep on the flight and to go to bed early the night before. That was me. I was West Coast, 2:30 a.m., 3 a.m. every Friday before a tournament. You got to make sure that you're preserving your sleep because that could do a number on you. Your body does not just recover from that in 24 hours. You'll feel a 3 a.m. wake up a week later. And so you've got to make sure that you're doing everything you can to insulate yourself from that. You should eat good food on the travel day. Don't eat garbage. There's McDonald's in every airport terminal. You should not eat it. You should stay hydrated. Wash your hands so you don't get sick on the plane or in the airport. Have you noticed debaters always get sick all the time? And they're like, why does this happen? A lot of times it's because we travel so much, and airports are vectors of disease. We've learned that now, maybe more severely than we ever hoped to learn. But don't get sick in the airport. During coronavirus, when you can't travel to a debate tournament, use Friday to rest. Do not make an entire prep day out of Friday just because you're not physically traveling. Okay? So just because you don't have to go across the country does not mean you should suddenly push yourself more. You should take the time to rest, eat good meals, get good sleep, watch a couple episodes of your favorite TV show, go on a walk. you should do things that are generally good for your mental health, because the next 3 days will not be. The one debate thing, well, there's a couple. There are a couple debate things you need to do on Friday. First and foremost, review and prepare all those Thursday files. Okay? So everything needed to be released on Thursday. Anything that was released by your teammates needs to be ready to read by Saturday morning. Ready to read means highlighted, blocked, no edits need to be made, no updates need to be made. And so all of that should be prepared on Friday. Luckily, that's kind of leisurely work. You just sit there, you type out blocks, you reorganize the file. Hopefully your Dropbox has some kind of organization where there's kind of like a one place where all the files get released, and then you can copy them into your own team's folder or whatever, so that you can have your own version of every file that your team produces. That way you can write your own individual blocks without messing with the master copy of every file. So that's how I recommend you organize your Dropbox if it's not currently done that way. You have a file release and team folders. And part of this is you also need to do a quick Google News/alerts check to make sure nothing has happened in the world that would seriously complicate your argument, etc. My one exception to my Thursday deadline rule is that politics updates happen on Friday. If you read the politics DA or you answer the politics DA, so if you read a plan, basically, you got to do your politics updates on Friday. One day can make all the difference on a politics DA. In fact, it usually does. And so just set aside 1 hour to do that. The 2N can do the neg updates. The 2A can do the av updates, vice versa. It doesn't matter. Make sure to get those done on Friday. The other thing, the other big debate thing that you need to do on Friday is those last few pref tweaks. So while you do want to do prefs and have them done by Thursday, there's almost always some new judges that have been added to the pool or subtracted from the pool on Friday. Tournaments usually have a couple hundred judges. Some people's plans change. Some people show up at the last second. What this means is that first, if judges get removed from the tournament, your prep numbers are going to change. Especially if you're prepping it with ordinal, which I think is how most high school tournaments are now. And you need to be very attentive to that the 50, 60, and 70 ordinal line are all very important, as I'm sure you've kind of begun to learn. And so if people leave the tournament, judges can get pushed above certain thresholds that you maybe don't want them. It's like if someone in your 30 percentile gets taken out of the tournament, someone who was 51% might be 49 now, and that can change whether the tournament will give you that person. And so you've got to do a quick review on Friday just to make sure that there's no serious changes. Similarly, if someone gets added, if they get added and you don't sort them, they're going to be like automatic ones. And so you don't want that to happen either. So I recommend setting an alarm that is so you read the tournament invitation to find out when the prep sheet is due, and just set a 2-hour alarm ahead of that. Okay, so just set on your phone, have a 2-hour alarm that's ahead of whenever the prep sheet is due. If that thing goes off on the airplane, buy the Wi-Fi and do the preps on the plane. It's like costs $10. It sucks, I know, but like it's so much better than having a really bad. Like would you pay $10 to win a break round? Like of course you would. And so just get it done. Do it. Ideally, you would have done it before the airplane, but if you're stuck in that situation, just make sure it happens. Set an alarm. A lot of the tips that I'm giving might sound like they're kind of splitting hairs a little bit, but if you want to win a tournament, that's kind of how it goes. Last big thing for Friday, and this is actually more a whole weekend long thing, but I want to introduce it here. I am a very, very big proponent of no work in the hotel. And that's exactly what it sounds like. And it's a little controversial, and your coach might have other opinions. So, you can't take this as perfect advice all the time, because we live in an imperfect world sometimes. But if you can, I recommend doing 0 debate work in your hotel room except for speaking drills. This means, especially after a day of debates, no work at night, no work in the mornings, no work when you arrive on Friday in the hotel, none of that. All of that work should be done ahead of time. And so the hotel should be a place of rest, of relaxation. If you like to exercise, I highly recommend doing that on Friday, like going for a run or something like that. But I don't recommend cutting cards in the hotel. Now, if you have to finish up some of those Thursday files, that's one thing for Friday afternoon or whatever. If you still have a few hours of that to do, you can do that. But in general, ideally, most of that stuff will be done before you get there. And definitely Saturday and Sunday night, don't do work. Your sleep is just so much more important on those days than anything else. Okay. I'm going to pop into the chat real quick to see if there's any questions, if you have any, because now we're about to start the tournament. So I'll do that really fast. Chat. When can you prep out answers to new neg arguments broken? Okay, that's a good question. So if new arguments are read during the tournament, you should be doing that prep in between debates. So at night, you're not going to be able to write a new case neg. I promise you, you can't do that. And if you do, it's still not worth your time because there's only a fraction of a chance you're going to debate that app in the morning, but there's a guaranteed chance you're going to debate something in the morning. And in order to debate something, you need your sleep. So I recommend doing that. Some people are blessed with having a few coaches that can do that stuff at night. And I'm not going to be dishonest. If you have that, that's going to be a large advantage. So you should organize that resources to make sure that they are doing that work during the night. If you have other students that are not at the debate tournament, they can be doing it during that time. Sunday night is a special time because most of your debate team will not have broken a lot of the time, and so they can be working on it. But in general, I don't recommend doing that work during the nighttime at the tournament. I recommend doing that between the debates. There's a lot of time between the debates at a debate tournament, like a lot, like several hours throughout the day. And that's more than enough time to focus on all that stuff. Okay. Closing the chat for now. Let's move on to Saturday, or early prelim day. First things first, Saturday morning, speaking drills. Presets are not warm-ups, despite what you may have heard. You should already be warmed up when you arrive at the tournament. This means doing, at least in my opinion, 16 minutes of speaking drills before you leave your hotel room. 16 minutes is not an accidental number. That's your 1AC or your 1NC twice, which means that the first person to give a speech when you arrive in round one is either going to be the 1A giving the 1AC or the 1N giving the 1NC. Whoever is doing that needs to be ready to give 8 minutes of speaking basically first thing in the morning. The only way to do that is to be warmed up already. So give your speaking drills. I recommend not only doing that 16 minutes of speaking, but also a few other checklist drills to make sure all your other faculties are in order. Do an eye scanning drill where you read backwards, and do some enunciation drills where you make sure all your facial muscles are warmed up. Okay, those don't have to be long. I would count up to 30 and then backwards from 30. I would do the whole alphabet and then I would do up to 30 and back to 30 again, over enunciating every syllable. That's a good enunciation drill. Do a little backwards reading to make sure your eye scanning is good. The side benefit of this is it'll also help you to diagnose any problems with your speaking in the morning. So if you have a little, like, who's been in the situation where you're giving a speech at a tournament and that's the first time you realize you had a sore throat? Like, you felt fine and everything was going okay, and then all of a sudden you start giving a 1AC and you sound like a horse. Like, that's not accidental. That's because, like, you can have a sore throat that doesn't really affect your normal conversational speaking, but it does start to kick in when you start going fast. And so if you do speaking drills and warm-ups in the morning, you're going to know about that. You can drink tea and you can go slower. You can take a couple cards out of your 1AC so that you're not pressured. And that way you're prepared. Once you get to the tournament, the first two debates are usually presets, which means that they are predetermined debates that are not based on your record. This means that if you're preparing to win the tournament, and that is a big if you are preparing to win the tournament, these debates should be the easiest of the tournament. Now, I'm not saying they will be. Sometimes they're very hard, even if you are preparing to win the tournament. And a lot of you might not be quite in the phase yet where you can go straight from this lecture directly into winning tournaments. And so a lot of times the presets can be challenging. If you're not in this situation, you should wait until I describe rounds 3 and 4, because that's what your presets will feel like. But just for the time being, if you're trying to win the tournament and your presets are a little bit easier because of that, you need to keep in mind a couple things. One, speaker points. Speaker points are the lifeblood of the prelims. And the reason is that they determine your seating, and your seating determines how easy your elims are. You cannot, it's impossible to overstate the benefit of good speaker points. So in a preset, like I said, presets are not warm-ups. They're opportunities to grab some really good speaker points, okay? Because the debate is maybe a little bit less challenging content-wise or technically, you have the opportunity to do really good speaking in that round and focus a little bit more on your technique and your quality than maybe you normally would. Trip is asking, if you are planning to win the tournament, don't you have to debate the best teams anyway? And so why does seeding matter? That is true, but if you have to debate the best team in the octas, you're breaking a lot of your good stuff in the octas, which will change how the longevity and the mileage of your new strategies. Also, even if you do want to win the tournament, there's a large difference between losing in the semis and losing in the doubles. And so while it would be nice to win every tournament, sometimes we can't do that. So in general, seeding does still matter. Okay, other thing for the presets, if you are trying to win, don't break things. Your breaking order should be designed to avoid having to break stuff in the presets if you can. Okay, debates 3 and 4. And if you're not quite at the level where you're going to win tournaments yet, which is totally fine. Most people are not. If all 38 of you were going to win tournaments, the tournament would have to have 38 winners. So clearly, we're all kind of at different stages, and that's fine. It's the great thing about debate. This is kind of how you should think about your presets. You should be similarly focused on speaker points, but be a little bit more flexible on breaking things should it be necessary. Big wins and high prelim records matter. In general, the more teams you can beat, the more okay it is to break something in a prelim. And that might be counterintuitive, right? In a prelim, not a preset. The more teams you can beat, the more okay it is to break something in a prelim. And that's because you won't get that team on the same side in the elims, and that team represents a larger share of the teams that can beat you. Okay? So if there's 4, this is a hyperbole. If there's 4 teams in the country that can beat you regularly, and you debate one of them in the prelims, that's 25% of the teams that can beat you in the elims already gone. So it's a little bit more okay to break something new there than if there's 20 teams in the country that can beat you, because then that's only 5% of the teams that you can beat you in the elims, and therefore how conservative you are in the prelims should be based a little bit on how much fire you're going to have to go through in the elims on Monday. So be attentive to that. Yeah, but those early prelims are really all about speaker points and trying to conserve your Dropbox, trying to stretch the mileage of all your new stuff. Remember back when I said you should write new assignments and have breaking orders designed for them? I actually a lot of times wrote an early or a middle prelims generic that was like, this is for rounds, and there's 8 rounds in college to adapt. Like, this is for rounds 4 through 7 or 4 through 8. And it's like, this is a thing that we're designing it to read in the prelims just to grab the one extra prelim win. And it was usually some like crappy DA that didn't make the cut for Monday. And so, if you have something like that, that can help you boost through these few middle debates. Okay, Sunday, late prelim day. Speaking drills in the morning, as usual. No changes, do them again. They should be easier because you already did a lot of speaking the day before, but you should do it anyway to keep it going. Speaker points matters again on Sunday, and speaker points will start to matter a lot because you're going to control who you debate every next debate. And so you're going to start to feel the effects of good speaking versus bad speaking on Sunday. And so if you were doing really good speaking, you're going to consistently debate an easier team in your bracket, theoretically, than you are if you're consistently just scraping by with bad points. You don't want to be scraping by with bad points. The thing I said about breaking things, again, try to stretch the mileage of your arguments because you got a lot to do on Monday, but it's okay to be a little bit progressively more flexible as the tournament goes on. The one big thing I want to talk to you all about Sunday is this concept called one more prelim. And it's also a Saturday thing, but it matters more on Sunday. And the one more prelim idea is that there's a really large strategic tournament long benefit from winning one extra prelim round. And the way I can illustrate this is kind of by describing the phase everyone goes through, including myself, including all debaters that you can think of, all your lab leaders went through this phase where they transition from 3-3 to 4-2. Okay, the transition from 3-3 to 4-2 is awesome. It's like one of the most fulfilling things in debate because you go from watching the first elim to being in the first elim. You have a reason to get up on Monday. It's awesome. You go 3-3, you clear, you're like, oh my God, yes. You go 4-2, and then you just get slapped out of existence on Monday morning, right? Everyone's been there. It's like one of the weirdest whiplash feelings in debate. But like, you do really well, you clear, you're so excited, and literally someone just turns your lights off in Monday morning. It happens. It's part of life. It's a lesson, whatever. One more prelim is the solution to this issue, which is that a goal for your prelims, an overarching goal for your prelims, should be to getting one more win. When you go from 4-2 to 5-1, as good as 3-3 to 4-2 was, 4-2 to 5-1 is just liberating because you go from getting just like backhanded in the doubles to having a fighting chance in the doubles, maybe fighting chance in the octas, and moving forward. So we really want to improve our prelim records. So these couple extra wins, around 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, depending on how many prelims there are at a tournament, will determine your seeding actually more than speaker points can. The worst speaker of the tournament can still be the top seed just by winning all their prelims. If you're currently a 4-2 or a 5-1 debater, you need to focus on what is consistent about your losses, okay? All of those prelims, you need to think about what is the common thread. The great thing about this is that team you always lose to make you 4-2, like who's been 4-1 and they're like, oh my God, I'm on the top of the world. Like I could be 5-1. This is awesome. I'm like only lost one debate, and then you lose one. You're like, I'm back to 4-2 again. Like you've been there, right? That kind of sucks too. Like you're always losing to the same caliber team when that happens. Okay. You're always losing to another 4-1. What does it take to beat a 4-1 team? Okay. And you need to think like, what is the common thread across all those teams? And then start to improve those specific areas. The great thing about this is that team that you need to beat is ironically the team that's exactly your level. And so you need to think like, what would I need to do to beat myself? What are my weaknesses that I can still get to being 4-1 at, that if I could beat, I could be 5-1. So focus on what's consistent about those losses and improve. Don't do any work Sunday night. The one thing I will add Sunday night is now the prep dynamic has changed. You might have a decent amount of your squad that is available to do work all night. And by all night, I hate to say it, but like I kind of mean all night. And that's because those last few debates on Monday become a game of prep really fast. And it's because a lot of the debaters at those last few levels are very similar in skill. They don't make a lot of the common mistakes. And you're debating against people that have a lot of new arguments to read, and you got to have prep. It's also true because now, unlike the prelims where you can debate any random set of teams, you likely have a very narrow list of teams that you can debate and the order that you will debate them. And so you can focus your prep much more. Your coaches and the team and teams that are not clearing should be your Sunday night team. They should be working for you Sunday night. You should have a meeting on Sunday night that's very quick, where you talk about the places you're light and the places where you're good. You should talk about the teams that you need a little bit extra work against and the teams you don't, judges that you need intel on, and then you go to bed. And if you've built a team that is well staffed, because it has a lot of recruits, everyone is invested in winning. Everyone sees the organization is more important than themselves, and the young people know that at the end of the tunnel, they will get the same treatment, then they will be far more motivated to do that Sunday night work than they would be if you were just a taskmaster who just required people do your bidding, those people are going to go to bed a lot earlier than they maybe would. Cade, do you have a question? What is it?
Okay, so I guess what do you do? So I understand recruiting is a big part of all this, but like if you're just like a partnership or maybe a partnership and a coach or two, what is your game plan for like either like even the day before elims or like maybe even a night after elims? What should you be doing that night?
So the night after elims, I'm going to talk about it last because Monday and Tuesday we still have, but Sunday night you should still not be doing anything. You can't afford to sacrifice your sleep for a few extra cards. If you have a coach or two, they should totally be working to make sure that this is done. If you don't, you got to maybe wake up a little bit early and prep as you would for debating a normal debate. It's not impossible. If you do a lot of comprehensive prep before the tournament, you're not going to need to do many Sunday night things. And so if I were to kind of summarize what to do if you don't have a lot of hands on that Sunday night, is to be way more thorough in your time before the tournament to make sure that your bases are covered, and also be a little bit more attentive to generics because generics will help get you through that. Also maybe write a new app because that way you can obviate the prep of whoever you're debating. Basically do stuff before the tournament that can make up for a lack of prep the night before. Monday, speaking drills in the morning, same deal. First elim. Again, if you're trying to win the tournament, it is a little bit like a preset. It's often the easiest if you are a high seed, but be careful because there's a new dynamic for high seeds on Monday morning. Chances are the team you are debating knew they were debating you 12 hours ago. They had all night to prepare a strategy, and you are likely not reading something new because you're saving it. Also, that thing about sleeping, they might not be doing because all they want to do is get to the octas, and they don't care if they pass out in the middle of the 2AC in the octas. They got to the octas. And so they're probably up all night cutting cards for your thing. And so you're going to be in a little bit of a tighter spot in that first debate. So three main notes for those first few elims. First, you need to be debating at your best. Do not take anything for granted in that first debate. Second, if you need to do a little newness in the doubles, that's okay. If you're debating a team and you want to break a new advantage and you would not have broken the new advantage against them in the prelims, that's fine. That is, the elims are a different debate than the prelims. And it's okay to be a little bit more liberal with your breaking strategy in the elims than you would normally be. Also, this is a great reason in general to have new advantages, because a new advantage is the perfect doubles or octas breaking strategy because it doesn't cost you a whole lot to write a new advantage. It'll throw the other team off just enough to get their coaches out of the room, and it will help get you to the next one without having to read a whole new argument. Third, and this is a little bit of a personal choice, and again, is basically only if you're a high seed, neg in the doubles. Be neg in the doubles, unless it's a new app. If you're nagging the doubles, you get rid of that they got to write a case neg all night problem. That's terrifying to walk into. Don't give them a night. If you're a high seed, be nagging the doubles. If you're a lower seed, you should be doing the opposite of all of this. Use that 12 hours to your advantage. We were just talking about what to do Sunday night. This is the converse, this dynamic right here. Being neg in the doubles is always great because you have a bunch of time. Love being neg in the doubles, basically for any team. In general on elim day, the rest of the elims kind of just follow. There's not a large difference between all of them. Be very liberal with breaking things on this day. You can always write new things between tournaments, but you never want to lose in the doubles or the octas and have a whole bunch of new stuff that you wanted to read in the finals. You got to get there first. Also, your opponents will probably also be breaking a lot of stuff throughout the elims, so it's not like you're going to need a whole bunch of new stuff in the finals. The finals is often a debate with like less new stuff than the quarters and semis have for this reason. Everyone's often spent a lot of their new stuff by the time they get there. The one caveat is I recommend having one new neg generic that is saved for if you're planning on winning the tournament, you want to have a neg generic that's for the semis or the finals only. And that's because in the semis or the finals only, you might debate a new app and you have to have something to deal with that. A new neg generic, new process counter plan, new topic K, whatever, is going to help punch through that last new app. In the semis and the finals, on average, you're going to be asked once. right? And so one new negative generic will help get you through that. You should have an end game in mind for the elims. You should know how you want it to end, kind of like I was just describing. Like you should have that negative generic in your head for those last debates. But then again, you should stay focused on each debate. Treat it like it's the prelims mentally, in that you don't want to get psyched out by the fact that you're debating in a hotel ballroom or you're debating for 3 judges or anything like that, because those things will trip you up. Just do what you've been doing and it won't be that different. Elim day is actually one of the lightest days when it comes to winning a tournament, because ideally all you're doing is debating. All of the work you needed to do should have been done already. You have your new arguments. You saved them for Monday. You got your speaker points. You got your seed. You did all your prep ahead of time. Your files are prepped. Your prep sheet is done. Now it's just execution. It's not time to get psyched out. I recommend you take breaks, have a playlist, eat, and do other things that generally improve your mood. How should we consider when deciding whether to flip AF or neg post the doubles? That is a little bit more dependent on the specific debate. I would recommend, in general, flipping AF if you've got new stuff to say. And I would be a little bit wary of AF in the first couple debates just because of this prep dynamic that I've described. I personally always liked to be neg in the elims if I was not debating something new, just because I liked the control of being neg. You get to set the terms of the debate. So basically, I will say the first thing is if you're really weak on one side, avoid that side. Next decision point, newness first. If you're avoiding new or you have new, that can be your first decision. Second is if you're real weak on one side for any number of reasons, you can avoid that side. Third is that if you're trying to avoid prep by the other team, like you've been reading the same AF for a long time and you think there might be a case neg, you can go neg. Fourth is if the other side maybe has a little bit of a weakness you want to exploit, or the judging panel is really good for one side, like your neg going for framework and the panel is really good for that, you can consider that. But those are kind of 4 factors roughly in order that I would consider. I hate to say, but like sometimes it's also just a gut decision. Like it's a lot of luck because you're betting a little bit on what the other team's going to have in their box, and you're hoping that it doesn't mess with what you have to say. So it depends. Do you like a little bit of the unpredictability but the control that comes with being neg, or do you like the stability but perhaps lack of control that comes with being AF? And you kind of decide. Okay, there was a question about anxiety on Elim day. I have found that the most Elim day anxiety comes from the fact that it's Elim day, in that it's sudden death debating. The best way to deal with that is to try to psych yourself into the prelims where it's not sudden death debating. Okay, so focus on the things that make it similar to the prelims. You're giving speeches, you're updating the wiki after your debates, you're eating, you're maybe talking to your friends in the hallway, you have a playlist. Do those things. What you should not be doing is meditating on how your season will unfold if you lose in the quarters. That should not be a thing that's on your mind. And the reason is that is the self-destructive thinking pattern that will, devolve you into overthinking elims and stuff like that. Focus on the benefits of the prelims, or focus on what the prelims are like and make small adjustments as you need to for the elims. My other note for anxiety and debating is that it just goes away with time. Like, there's no real way around that. There's small things you can do that improve anxiety generally. Like, I'm not an expert in that, both because I have no training in teaching people how to overcome anxiety, and I'm also had a lot of debate anxiety myself, like all through my debate career. So I don't have a ton of good reasons. I had a playlist that I always listened to that helped pump me up. I had playlists for different points of the tournament. So I had my Friday travel playlist, I had my Elim day playlist, I had my round 8 playlist. And that's just, you do things that make you feel better and happy and recognize that debate is not the end of the world. And however you best do that, you do. Tuesday, quickly, because we're going a little bit over time. Tuesday is review day. There's 3 things you need to do on Tuesday. First is autopsy the tournament. If you didn't win, why didn't you? If you won but it was close, why was it close? This is when you figure out what you need to do to win an extra prelim. We talked about that. Figure out where your argument holes are. This is how you design your next research assignments, etc. Second thing you need to do is select the redos that you're going to give and schedule the redos. I generally like choosing redos from debates you lost, but also you can choose debates from you won where you wanted to improve. All of that is fine. Third, mine the wiki. Not only update it, but mine the wiki for all the new cards that have been read, reformat them, reorganize them, recut them where necessary, and use that as the base for all your new research assignments. Also find out what got read. Sometimes in the heat of a tournament, you don't realize someone read a new app. Now is the time to find out what that new app was. Okay, so I'm sorry I don't have time for a dedicated question section at the end, but it looks like we got like some of them throughout the time, so that was pretty good. Thank you all for coming and being a great audience, and I hope that you can use some of these tips in the DDI tournament and in tournaments after that. See ya. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.